I drank my family away. It's a truth that can't be escaped. I'm 79 years old, and I live with it every day. Alcohol saved me when reality became unbearable. My children suffered the most, although I didn't admit it. I'll tell you how one habit ruined my entire life.
Hello, I am the author of this channel, and today I want to tell the story of one woman. There is nothing unusual or dramatic about her life. Millions of people live in the same way, and that is exactly why her story matters. Her name is Marta. She is 79 years old, and she told me about her life honestly, without excuses and without trying to make it sound better than it was. Alcohol did not enter her life as a problem. At first it was simply a way to get through the day. She came home tired, with her head full of thoughts, pressure from work, home, and constant responsibilities. She carried everything on her own, never asked for help, and never said that things were hard. In the evening, a glass helped her stop feeling for a while. It did not make her happy and it did not solve anything, it only switched her off. That moment was the only time she allowed herself to let go. She did not believe anything was wrong, because in her mind addiction looked different. She went to work, took care of her duties, and showed up every day, so she believed everything was under control. Over time, alcohol stopped being something separate and became part of her normal routine. If the day was hard, she drank. If it was very hard, she drank more. She began to look forward to the evening not because of rest or family, but because she knew she could feel nothing again. When she drank, her thoughts slowed down and the tension eased, but at the same time she herself was changing, slowly and quietly, without noticing. She believed many people lived this way, and only years later did she understand that alcohol did not fix anything, it only delayed everything, and each day things became a little worse. At that time, nothing had been completely destroyed yet, but it was there that the process began, the process that would later take everything away. Over time, alcohol began to affect her home more than she was willing to admit. Evenings became tense and difficult. She often came home already irritated, and small things could set her off. A word from her husband or a question from her children felt like pressure. She answered sharply, raised her voice, and sometimes crossed into insults. When she drank, she said things she would never have said sober, especially to her children. She blamed them for how her life had turned out, said she had lost opportunities because of them, that she had given up too much for her family. In those moments, she believed she was only saying the truth she had carried inside for years, but for the children, those words stayed with them. After such evenings, the house fell silent. The children tried to stay out of her way. Her husband stopped talking or went to another room. In the morning, she woke up with a heavy head and a strange emptiness. She remembered the night only in fragments and chose not to think about it. It was easier to erase it and move on. She got up, did her usual things, cooked, went to work, spoke calmly, and acted as if nothing had happened. She did not apologize or explain herself, because for her the night was already over. For her husband and children, it was not. They remembered every word, every shout, every insult. These moments piled up and slowly changed the feeling in the house. Home stopped being a place of rest and became a place where everyone walked carefully, afraid of causing another outburst. She did not notice it, or she did not want to notice it. She told herself it was just a hard phase, something that happens in every family, something that would pass on its own. But with every evening like this, the distance between her and her family grew, trust faded, the bond weakened, and she did not realize that in these moments she was losing the very thing she believed mattered most. The husband tried for a long time to believe that things could still be fixed. At first, he stayed quiet, then he began leaving the house in the evenings, trying to be around her less when she was drinking, but it did not solve anything. Alcohol stayed in the home and slowly began to control everyone's mood. She lashed out at him more often, called him weak, said he did not support her, said she had to do everything alone. Sometimes she crossed the line and said things that humiliated him as a husband and as a father. She shouted in front of the children, blamed him for her own failures, and said she regretted the marriage. Even though she tried to act normal the next day, those words did not disappear. He remembered every scene, especially the ones after which the children cried or locked themselves in their rooms. He tried more than once to talk to her seriously, asked her to get help, to drink less, to think about the children, but these talks usually ended in arguments or promises that did not last. She could stop for a few days or weeks, but then everything returned. Alcohol again became her way to escape tension, and each new attempt to fix things ended worse than before. Over time, the husband saw that the children were growing up in a harmful environment. They became quiet, careful with their words, afraid to say the wrong thing. He began to think not about saving the marriage, but about protecting the children. The decision to leave was difficult, but he saw no other way. At first, he left alone, then he took the children for a few days, and later he understood that living like this was impossible. The divorce followed, along with court hearings and talks with psychologists and social workers. She saw it as betrayal, blamed him for everything, and did not accept her role in what had happened. During the trial, custody became the main issue, and in the end the children stayed with their father, not because he was perfect, but because life was calmer with him. When she learned the court's decision, it was a shock, but even then she could not fully accept responsibility. She felt she had been treated unfairly and that her family had been taken from her. Only later, when the house became empty and the evenings grew even quieter, did she begin to understand that she had not lost everything in one day, and not because of one man, but because of many years of choices she believed were right. After the divorce, her life became quieter, but the silence was not peaceful. The house was empty, the children no longer ran through the rooms, her husband was gone from her daily life, and alcohol became her only constant companion. At first, she drank even more, because there was no one left to stop her, but during this time she realized for the first time that she was no longer in control. Mornings became harder, her memory began to fail, she missed work, confused days, and sometimes woke up with shame, not clearly remembering what had happened the night before. That was when she first thought she needed help, not because someone forced her, but because she was afraid. The path to treatment was not simple. There were doubts, setbacks, and moments when she convinced herself she could handle it alone, but each time it ended the same way. In the end, she agreed to treatment. It was not a sudden awakening, but exhaustion. She no longer wanted to live like this. Treatment was difficult. For the first time, she was left without alcohol and without her usual way to escape from thoughts, memories, guilt, and shame for the words she had said to her children, for the scenes they had witnessed, and for the fear they had lived with. She began to accept responsibility, slowly and not all at once. Her first attempts to contact the children were careful and limited to short calls and a few messages, without demands and without excuses. She did not apologize right away, because she understood that words alone could not fix anything. The children responded calmly, without warmth but also without anger, and for her that already mattered. She continued treatment and held on. There were relapses, but they became less frequent. Over time, short meetings happened. They were rare, awkward, without closeness, but real. She learned to speak less and listen more, to stop explaining herself and stop blaming others. She understood that the past could not be changed, but it was still possible not to make things worse. This period did not bring quick happiness, but it brought clarity. For the first time in many years, she was living without constant self-deception, and although the pain remained, she learned to face it sober. Over the years, her life changed again, but without sudden turns. She ended up in a nursing home not because she was abandoned or pushed away, but because it became harder for her to manage on her own and help was not always nearby. At first, this place felt like final proof of failure, a quiet space where she had to sit alone with her thoughts, but with time she learned to live there as well. The days became predictable, without chaos, without the fear of waking up and not remembering the night before. She stayed sober, and that was what mattered most. The children did not come often, they had their own lives, work, families, and responsibilities, but they did come. Sometimes just for a short talk, sometimes for a longer walk, and that meant a lot to her. She no longer demanded or expected anything from them. She was simply there when they wanted to come. Over time, her ex-husband also began to visit. At first it was rare and careful, mostly because of the children, but later he came on his own, without tension and without old anger. One day he introduced her to his new wife, and it was not a painful moment for her. Instead, she felt relief, because she saw that he was living calmly and well. Slowly, she formed a normal relationship with this woman. They could drink tea together, talk about small things, and sometimes even laugh. For her, this was unexpected but important. She understood for the first time that life does not end only in losses, even when many mistakes have been made. She often thought about her younger years and about what she would have told herself back then, but these thoughts no longer overwhelmed her. They felt more like quiet regret than pain. She knew she could not take anything back, but she could protect what was left, and that was already a lot. Now she lived simply, without big plans, without expectations, but with the feeling that she was no longer hiding or lying to herself, and when her children came, even for a short visit, she felt grateful, not because life had become perfect, but because they had not completely turned away from her.
If I could go back, I would have asked for help earlier. I wouldn't have hidden the pain in alcohol and not taken it out on those who loved me. If you recognize yourself, stop now. while there is still someone to protect.